Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Right, Sefer Bamidbar. So the Netziv has an introduction to the whole of Sefer Bamidbar and asks why it is that Chazal referred to this as Chomesh HaPekudim. It's more in Sota and in various other places. Chomesh HaPekudim means the book of Numbers, which is how we translate it, obviously, in English. And the question really is, why is it that the Sefer is called, after this of all things? So, it begins with the censors, and there's one towards the end, right? You've got another count in Pinchas, you've got Bamidbar and you've got Pinchas. But why should it be that the name of the Sefer should take its name specifically from this counting? And the reason why this is a particularly important question is because if you think about it, this is not the first, account, right? They're counted in Shmos as well. So, what is it about this particular one that gives it that name? You could have easily called Shmos that for the same price, right? If you were talking about the first time they counted. So the Netziv says like this, that there is a major difference between the way in which they were counted and conducted themselves in Sefer Shmos and to what begins to happen now in Sefer Bamidbar. He says that when it comes to Bamidbar, they are in a transition stage, in the sense that in Shmos, the focus is very much on the idea of living on an elevated plane, a supernatural level. That's everything about, the whole existence of the with the Mishkan and everything else. They're living in the desert now. Whereas when it gets to Sefer Bamidbar, they are preparing to enter Eretz Yisrael. And because of that, it is more in the sense that it is more b'derech hateva, more in the natural order of things. Therefore, and this change is, if you like, symbolized by the fact that this is a very different type of counting. This is almost the type of counting which begins to set the tone for that existence on a natural plane, what we call b'derech hateva. They're not living anymore. They're not going to live anymore on that supernatural level. They are simply going to live b'derech hateva. And as a result, therefore, the Sefer is called Chomesh HaPekudim, in the sense that there is a difference in the type of counting they're undergoing. It's Pekudim, we come on to this afterwards as well. Lifkod means to, in terms of numbering them, but it also means an appointment. It also means a responsibility, right? So the idea being that come Sefer Bamidbar, they're undergoing a transition into a stage of new responsibilities, where they're no longer going to rely on everything being handed to them as symbolized by the Mon, for example. It descends from Shemayim, right? They're now going to have to work themselves at it. That's basically the idea that the Netziv sets out in his introduction. Now, the question, though, on a more detailed level, is what exactly the purpose at all is of the counting, right? So Rashi is the first Rashi on the Parsha. Rashi says that why is it that Moshe is told to count Bnei Yisrael? So Rashi says because because they were so cherished in front of Hashem, Mona Osom Kol Shom. Therefore, he counts them all the time. Shiyotzu Mitzrayim Menon, he counted them when they left Mitzrayim. And when they fell, the Egel Azov, he also counted them. Leida Minyan Hanusorim, in order to know the Minyan Hanusorim, to know those who are left. When he came to rest the Shechina on them, he also counted them as well. First of Nisan, the Mishkan is established, and on the first of Iyar, he counted them as well. So Rashi goes down this route of understanding that the counting symbolizes something significant, something important. Chibos on the fun of their cherish in front of Hashem. There's a fascinating Ramban, though, a bit later on in the Parsha. It's Perek Aleph Posuk Mem Hey. So the Ramban is going on the totals, right? The totals. The Posuk, the Torah spells out in detail the numbers for each Shevet, and then right to the end it says Eila HaPekudim Posuk Mem Daled Asher Pokad Meshavar Nasi Yisrael Shnei Maso Ish 12. So these were appointed the 12 of the Nesiim. Tells you, and it tells you there were 600,000, 603,000, and 550. That's the total count, excluding the Levium. Now says the Rambam on that pasuk, the Torah needed to spell out the total after spelling out the specifics. Because Moshe and Aaron were commanded to should know the mispar. They should know the number of the people. The yedu mispar kol shevet, and they should know the number of each shevet as well. Because that's the way of kings. They want to know. The leaders need to know the numbers. In other words, there's a practical function in use of a census. You need to know who is there. You need to know how many people. You need to know what you're dealing with. But the Rambam says like this. He then goes on to ask the following question. He says, I do not understand the purpose of this mitzvah. Why did Hashem tell them to do so? Because I understand why they had to, you had to, if you like, we had to allocate each who is allocated, who is part of each shevet, right? In order to simply, for a perfectly, important practical reason, the degolim, the flags, they had to go in the right order. The way the camp was ordered and everything else, that was something they had to know. Why was there a need to know the number? They had to all be appropriated to each shevet. But what was the purpose of knowing the number? So he says, perhaps it was to make known his kindness to them. They went down with 70 souls, and now they are with the sand of the seas. How many they were at the age of 20. Now, again, that's similar in the direction of Rashi. He numbered them, he counted them after every plague, after every incident. He is, if you like, uplifts really, or he really means he makes them, makes the nations of the world, the goyim, numerous. Yimchat, the yod of Tirpaim, he crushes them and he heals them, yod of Tirpeno. So in other words, there is this idea that Hashem is in control, both of the if there is a Mageifa, and also the healing from the Mageifa as well. Okay. Because of their cherishness in front of Hashem, he counted them all the time on a constant basis. Now this next, so far, the Ramban has basically essentially said the same as Rashi. But now listen to what he says. And furthermore, the person who would come in front of the father of all prophets, Moshe Rabbeinu, v'achiv kadosh Hashem, and his brother, the Holy One of Hashem, Aaron HaKohen, who noida eleim b'shmoi, and he is known to them with his name, who he is, that will give this individual merit and life. Because he comes into the, he calls it the secret of the people. Comes in the secret of the people, the council, the secret of the people, and Ubiksav B'nai Yisrael, he's numbered amongst the B'nai Yisrael, and the Zuchus Rabbim b'misparam, and the Zuchus of the Rabbim in their numbering. V'chein l'kulam Zuchus b'mispar she'im lefnei Moshe Aaron. So too with all of them, a merit in the number that they are numbered in front of Moshe Aaron. Ki yasimu aleim einom l'tova, because through doing so, they are able to place their eye upon them in a positive way. Yivakshu aleim rachamim, and they'll daven for them. They'll daven for each individual. Hashem alekev v'seichem Yosef alechem k'chem elef ba'omim v'lo yamit misparchem. May Hashem increase your number and reduce your number. Right? V'hashkolim, and the shkolim themselves will kofal nafsher seichem, they atone for their sins. Now what the Ramban here is doing is adding another feature and function of the census. He says one function of the census is you have the practical need to know what numbers and what's going on, right? The details. There is the idea of the fact that it's important. That's why you take a census of something that's important. But then, and this is based on an explanation of Soloveitchik gives in the Ramban, there's an extra issue, an extra idea, and that is and that is that when you count people, you get to know the individuals. You get to understand each person. This goal was something which Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to also achieve through the census. Hashem was saying to him, it's not just that you need to know the numbers for practical reasons. And it's also not just that I'm showing you they're important. I want you, as the leader, to get to know them. I want you to know each individual. I mean, that's very good. 600,000 people is an awful lot. Right, exactly. But conceptually, there are two methods, if you like, of leadership. There's the idea that you can have a leader who is detached, right? So and the way Rav Soloveitchik explains it is before the breaking of the Luchos, right? The relationship between Moshe Rabbeinu and Klal Yisrael really could have been on that general, kind of holistic level. So you basically, he is the representative of the whole of the Jewish people. He requires their consent, and he goes and he brings down the Luchos from Shona the Luchos Rishon. But when the Luchos are broken, okay, when the Luchos are broken, we've spoken about this before. What happens is now Hashem says to him, Parshas Kisisa, Kasav lecha es hadvarim ha'ela. You need to write these things. You need to do it. Okay. There's he understands that there's an introduction there of the need for Moshe Rabbeinu to serve on a much more fundamental level as the teacher, the Rebbe, the individual teacher and Rebbe of each member of the Jewish people of Klal Yisrael. And that is why, says Rav Soloveitchik, the Ramban is emphasizing here at the beginning of Sefer Bamidbar, Moshe Rabbeinu is told, you need to take the census and you need to know who they are, the mispar shemos, the number of the names of every individual. He's saying Hashem is saying, it's not enough that you just know the number. It's not enough you know how many there are. You need to count them, in the permitted way to count, obviously, right? And you need to know through the Shkolim, you need to know who they are to do the count in order to get to know them as individuals with their backgrounds, their own life experiences. He had become and needed to function as what we call Rabbon Shel Yisrael. He is the leader of the whole of Klal Yisrael, and he has to know each and every individual one. So that, as the Ramban emphasizes, when he davened for them, it's not just for the general public. You're davening for every individual Jew. And that, he says, what the Ramban means here. It's about, it's a fundamental message, according to this, in what leadership is, what the leadership of Klal Yisrael became, especially after the breaking of the Luchos, when there's that individual necessity to work on behalf of building up each individual. It became a much, if you like, closer bond that was necessary. That's symbolized by Moshe Rabbeinu having to, create those second luchos himself, make them himself. He's got to get much more involved in their individual lives in that way. That's the idea I think he's expressing here. And with that, you can understand on what the Ramban is helping us understand on a deeper level what the purpose and function of this census was. With this, I think with this idea, this notion of individuality and the fact that it's mispar shemos, the numbers, right? It's numbers, but it's also names. It's also symbolizing and singling out each individual. We find that expressed in other by other Meforshim as well. Rav Hirsch picks up here on the pasuk when it says Kol Hadas B'nei Yisrael. So when the Torah says in pasuk base, Su'es Rosh Kol Hadas B'nei Yisrael, he says that the word Adar, right? The word Adar is similar to the word. It's a similar word to Shena, to Lador, to Dear. It comes from a root Ya'ad. That's what he understands the word Adar. What is Ya'ad? Yeah, so Ya'ad is a destination, right? That's what it is. It's a destination, okay? And he also relates, or first does a lot of this, he relates the word Ya'ad, meaning a destination, to the word Yachad. You can have interchangeable guttural ches, the guttural ayin with the guttural ches, they're both guttural letters, so they have a relationship, Ya'ad and Yachad. So therefore, what exactly is Yad? It's coming together for a common purpose. That's what Eidah means. Eidah means individual people, okay, individuals who are coming together because they have a common calling, because they have a common purpose. That's an Eidah, right? So I think, there's an emphasis here in the sense that it's not the same. Each word, when we talk about the words we use for Kehillah, for Klal, each one has a different meaning. And they're not all the same. I think the word, like, for example, Klal, is the general, the general group. He's understanding that Eidah, Adas B'nai Yisrael, is something else. Eidah is you take all these individuals and unite them in a common purpose. They have a common calling. The idea is that how do individuals become a community? How do they become an Eidah? What makes them into a community? It's not the fact that someone says to them, become a community, right? Someone external, you group of people should now become a kehillah. Well, thank you very much. We prefer, who says we want to, that doesn't make us into a community. What really makes a community? An Eidah, because we have a shared concern. Yeah, we've got a shared destination. That's Rav Hirsch's point, right? We've got a destination that together we all want to arrive at. We can't get there ourselves, right? If we stay in our own silos, we won't get as far as we can get if we come together. That's really that is what an Eidah is. That's the real aim, if you like, of a kehillah. And it emphasizes beautifully, I think, this idea of mispar shemos, because although the Bnei Yisrael of the whole of Klal Yisrael, the Adas Bnei Yisrael, is the independent nature of every member of that, every member of the Bnei Yisrael, each individual being themselves, the guardians. That's how Hirsch puts it, the guardians of that Masorah, and coming together in common cause. That's the Eidah, the Yachad, the Ya'at. Yeah, you with me? So there you are. So that's what he says. And therefore, he links that very nicely as well to the idea of Lifkudeihem, right? What is Lifkudeihem? What are the Pekudei B'nai Yisrael? These are the appointments that are made, right? What does it say? It says the word tifkadu as well. And the word Pekudeihem you find again and again and again in the parsha. Each of the shvatim, Pekudeihem and Matzei Ruvain, right? What is the Pekudeihem? A Pekid is someone who's in charge of something, right? In charge of a mission, in charge of it. He's got a task to do. These are the appointees, in the sense that every single person is an appointee, right? Has a role, has a task to do, in order that everyone should get to the destination together, right? That is the idea. It's the number, Lefkudeihem is the number of people almost the Torah can rely on. Yeah, you with me? In order to get this mission right. That's the Pekudeihem. Okay. So so how do we link that to the Dugonim? How do we link that to the flags? So there's an Emes Liakov Kamenetsky at the beginning of the parsha. He says the following. He says the following idea. He asks a very simple question. Again, this is right at the beginning. Emes Liakov. He says in Yaminyan Azeh, Kinir Masei Dashvotim, Shimon Eskad Acharovin V'Shimon. So if you look at the way it is structured, he points out that the order, what is the order? At the beginning in Perek Aleph, you've got first each Shevet is listed separately. Yeah? So you've got Reuven, Shimon, and then God, and it follows the Dugonim, right? Because the Degel Machane Reuven is right, Reuven, Shimon, and God. So he points out, very simple, if you like a simple observation, it seems that one of the main functions of the counting is for the Dugonim, right? It's to organize everyone in their own shevet, right? He says it's tomua. It's astonishing. When Bnei Yisrael leave Mitzrayim, what does the Torah say in Shmos? Perek Yudal Pasuk Ches, of Bnei Yisrael yotzim biyod Ramah. They go out with an outstretched arm, right? They go out in pride. They didn't sneak away like avodim, right? Running away. So why did they wait a whole year before they organized around the Golim? around the flags, around their different encampments. What's going on before? They could have done this. They should have done it right at the beginning. That should be the first job, right? They walk out of Mitzrayim. Okay, here you go. Reuven, Shimon, right? You're on this side. What's going on? Why wait so long? Yeah, a whole year before they're organized, each under each shevet. It's a beautiful question, simple, straightforward question. Says Rabbi like this. He says that the idea of the Degolim is essentially, there's an essential problem with the notion of the Degolim, of the flags and the way they and the Shvatim, in the sense that it divides people. Okay, it does, right? When you're waving your own flag, and they all had their own physical different flags. So Reuven's waving their flag, and Shimon's waving their flag, and everyone's waving different flags. Okay, and each one had a different, image on the flag, right? So Ibn Ezra, I think, brings here as well that the Reuven had a Toras Odom of a person. You heard it was a Toras Aryeh, a lion. There were all different representations on the flags as well. So that seems to imply, as we know also from the brachas of Yaakov, they had their own she'ifas, their own ideals and their own character traits, and they were trying to, in a sense, getting in different directions, right? They're all trying to achieve something slightly different. And therefore, essentially, the problem with the flags is they can cause a division amongst the people. So why is it they wait a year? Because when they have this central focal point, when that's been established, which is the Mishkan and the Oil Moed, right? And Sefer Vayikra, of course, is primarily focused around that, the whole notion of Kedusha. We spoke about the Korbanos and all. It's the establishment of what that Oil Moed is meant to represent. We know that because in Vayikra, even the parts of Vayikra which are focused on personal Kedusha, it's all linked, right? Because you have your Kedusha in the sense of the Kedusha that's central to Klal Yisrael through the Oil Moed, and then I have the personal Kedusha that I develop myself and my own private life, everything else. It's all linked in one. There is a central focus. He says that when the kulam choynim mesaviv laMishkan, because once they're all encamped around the Mishkan, ein ze gorim lepirot, then having a different trait or objective or aim doesn't divide. Exactly. Why? Because each one is actually still always focused on the center point. There's a focal point which drives everyone together. He compares it to a person. He says, because a person has ears to listen, to hear with, right? And eyes to see. Yeah, is there any machlokas going on between your eyes and your ears? Hopefully not. Otherwise you got a problem, right? And it's the same thing with why? Because it's united in the person. The person has itself, right? Unites the different qualities. So too, he says, with the nation of the Klal Yisrael, because they're all centered on this central point, this what he calls the Nekudat Merkazit, the central ideal, the central point. Yeah, there's no problem about division, separation, and therefore that's why they had to wait till now to have the flags, the flags to be established, the Degolim, because only when the Mishkan is established as this central focus, then they can all make sure they can all have their individual traits. That notion of individuality that we mentioned, right? The idea that you haven't people, these are individual, Mispar Shemos, individual people, individual names, but because they're focused around the center, everything can proceed the way it should, and they can remain fundamentally united. Now the Leviim, Perek Gimel Posuk Tesvov, okay, there's a slightly very astonishing feature of their of the way they're counted, because they're counted separately. We understand that they've got separate roles, and in fact, much of the parsha towards the end, especially details the tasks that they have to do, their responsibilities, the unique responsibilities the Leviim had. But if you look what Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, they're going to be counted from a month old. Okay, Rashi says, why a month old? First, just that first line of Rashi, Rashi says, after a month, they're considered to be viable. Established as a viable life in that way, and therefore, from that moment on, he is nimna to be called, right? Shomer mishmeres hakodesh, right? to guard. From that moment, he's able to guard the Mishmeres HaKodesh, the great, the responsibility, the deep and significant, most significant responsibility of the Levium have. Now the Medrash here asked the obvious question: from a baby a month old can't do much in terms of Shomer Mishmeres HaKodesh, right? You're not going to put the baby by the door of the Beis Hamikdash, making sure that the gates are closed. So what does Shomer Mishmeres HaKodesh when 30 days old? Okay, and the baby himself needs someone to look after him, and therefore, and then the Medrash gives lots of different answers to this, and they all the answers are basically around the theme of they increases their reward, their schar, to be counted from the age of 1 month, or to show how cherished they are, and the Levim so special from a month old, etc., etc. But Rav Shimon Schwab in Mayan Beis Shoeva asks, he says it's still difficult to understand. He says, how can you announce about a baby of a month old that this child is going to grow up to be a shomer mishmeres hakodesh, to look after and protect the kedusha of all of Klal Yisrael, right? How can it be that you can announce that? He says it has to be that the Shevet of Levi it was such a strong chazaka. It was an assumption, right? It was a chazaka that it would happen, that they would raise their children to be great tzaddikim, to be these righteous individuals, tzaddikim, yeshorim, people who would be ru'uyim, lishmar, mishmeres hakodesh. They would grow up to be able to fulfill that role. What was the secret, he says? What's the secret? What was the secret of the chinuch that the parents of the Nevi'im gave to their kids, that even from 1 month old, you could say, like Rashi says, they were shomer mishmeres hakodesh, they're going to grow up to fulfill this role. So he says like this, in the bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu gives to the Levium at the end of his life, what does he say? The bracha he gives to Shevet Levi is that at the critical, pivotal moment, he didn't recognize his father or his mother or even his family, and he did the right thing. Okay, what does it refer to in the Egel Azov? And it's in Egel Azov, and Hashem says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Mila Hashem Ilai, who, right, to Ashu's troopers come to me, Nes Velo Kol Bnei Levi, they all come together, and they have to fulfill an immensely difficult task. They have to kill even close relatives, because those who had participated in Egel Azov, yet they did not shirk from that responsibility, because their attachment, their love for Hashem, was so great that they knew that they had to put that first. They had to prioritize that. The point is, he says, that when a child sees that a parent has such strong priorities, right? That even in a very difficult situation, will do the right thing even when it's incredibly difficult. Child can't fail to understand and learn from those priorities. That's the message. The message is that with an entire shevet that was so dedicated that they could answer the call of Mila Shem Elai, so that they had to even give up tremendous sacrifices, and yet still manage to do the right thing, it had to rub off on the children in that way. Children are incredibly savvy, and one thing they always will sense is what's important and what's significant to the parents. Yeah, there's no hard and fast really guarantees in life and everything else, of course not, right? But at the end of the day, there is no question that an incredibly strong theme running through the whole notion of how we approach chinuch is a sense of priorities. If something is important enough to a parent, that will hopefully rub off on the children. And the way he describes it is like this: that love for Hashem which the parents demonstrated will rub off on the child, and the child will himself be able to go on lishmar mishmeres hakodesh. Over Rabos hayomim, he says, with as many days carry on, garin zeh shel avos habore mislavleiv belev hayeled bebeis halevi. that little tiny spark, the seed that is planted within the child who comes from Shevet Levi, grows. Ad shegam hu som lamataras chayav lios nimne bein shomer mishmeres hakodesh. Until with time, that child will grow up to be counted amongst the ranks of Shomrei Mishmeres HaKodesh, the one who wants to fulfill that role. And that is why, even at 30 days old, even as a baby, we can still say that this person, this young child, will grow up in that way. And it was all because of that chinuch that the parents demonstrated and showed, and particularly the fact they were able to prioritize something, even when it was difficult, to answer that call of Milas Shemega. Have a very good Shabbos. Okay.
Shkoyach, thank you so much. Shkoyach, Rabbi. Shkoyach.
Okay, have a good evening, good Shabbos.
Thank you, good Shabbos.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Shkoyach.